Yes, people, hello and welcome back to the show. As ever, I'm your host, Dan Potts, and there's no lead judges tonight, but he will be on a little bit later. He's in Dubai, sunning it up as ever, but he is going to be joining us. So I thought I'd get somebody who speaks a lot more sense than him on the show. Elliot, Elliot from Arsenal Vision Podcast. How are you, Elliot?
I'm good. How are you? I don't know
Yeah.
about the speaks more sense part, but I'm certainly willing to say something.
Yeah, 100% you are, man. And do you know what? I got the best compliment the other day. Somebody said to me, the only person who speaks quicker than Dan Potts is Elliot from Arsenal Vision Podcast. And I thought, is that a compliment, Elliot? I mean, I'll take it. Do you know what I mean?
It's much harder to analyze if you're saying anything coherent, as long as you say it very, very quickly. And if you say it quick enough, some people will be fooled into thinking that you have a point.
Absolutely, mate. Thank you so much for jumping on, the man. It's always a pleasure to have you. And I thought we would get a Chelsea fan on, and none other than the best, the most articulate Matisse. How are you, bro?
Absolutely, very, very good and appreciate it. Good to be on, first time on this channel as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, man, you're always welcome on, man, and I always like to get your opinions on how things are. And of course, we've got you on Wednesday night, so I'm going to go into Chelsea in a little bit, but there's no other real place to start other than with Arsenal. So, Matisse, I'm going to start with you from a Chelsea perspective first, then I'm going to come to Elliot, because it's interesting for me, and that's why I love doing these shows, is to get people on, have opinions from neutral fan base, opinions about the Arsenal. And the way things were looking for quite a lot of us, it was looking like top four was potentially in our hands and favourites for it. And of late, it seems that we have gone a little bit backwards. Matisse, where do you sit with the Arsenal and Arteta thing is my first question, and what's the sort of your thoughts on his kind of role at the Arsenal?
I think there's definitely two sides to it. There's the side that he's cleansed the squad. He's made big decisions with Aubameyang in January, which I've applauded him for, because I felt like he needed to have a little bit of a change with the seniority of the team. I feel like at points they've been a little bit complacent, maybe, unprofessionalism as well. So I like the fact that he's tried to switch out a lot of that and bring in a younger, more talented crop of players and try and rejuvenate the squad. However, while you're doing that, you still have, for me, bare standards that you have to meet. And when you look at Arsenal, I always say the expectations are too low. You have to be, for me, finishing in the top four. Especially when you have no European football. You got knocked out of the FA Cup in the third round. And it's not like Manchester United are having the season we expected. I think Tottenham finishing ahead of Arsenal is a lot worse of a situation from a rival standpoint and from a performance standpoint than Man United finishing ahead of you. And that's also the difference. And the way I look at it is I say to myself, well, you had a great run. He got his credit for the wins at Aston Villa, Wolves. He deserved that credit. You were resilient. You won difficult matches, but you need to keep that going, sustain that. And against Brighton, against Southampton, against Palace, not good, but you could take it as a once-off. But then the other two, I think it's just too much, especially when you're playing these mid-table teams that are quite beatable. They're not playing for anything, and you're not taking advantage. And now you see the fixture list is getting really, really tough. And I always say to myself at the end of all this, if Arsenal don't finish in the top four, don't capitalize on the opportunity, I always say you have to overachieve to achieve. That's my new slogan now for Arsenal and for Tottenham. If these clubs are ever going to get themselves together, you have to overachieve to achieve. If you always just meet expectations and Arsenal are always going to finish where they're expected to finish, which is outside the top four, then you're never going to really make any progress in this process, right? So when you look at Arsenal, I just say to myself, if they had European football like they usually do, they have more games, less recovery, more injuries because you're playing more games, and this squad depth is clearly now questioned with Partey out, Tierney out. Where would Arsenal actually be, without this helping hand of no European football? And it looks like you'd be roundabout where you've been anyway. And when you underachieve in an 8th place finish, cool. First season, half a season, cool. Second season, you'd expect 6th place, top 6. You finish 8th. For me, you massively underperform. Now, because you've overperformed, now people are going to say you overperformed because you performed better than when you underperformed. No, for me, you should have finished higher. Now you're finishing where you should be, where you should have been last year if you finished 6th or 5th. And then now you should be going into the top 4. You should really be aiming to get into the Champions League. If you're not looking to do it now when Manchester United are on their knees, you can't look to do it when Ten Hag comes in and they actually sort themselves out. So I think you're missing an opportunity if you don't take this.
Yeah, Matisse, you're talking facts, mate, and everything you're saying is so true. And it's great to hear it from somebody who's not getting told that they're Arteta in or Arteta out, because that's what it seems with this Arsenal fan base. You have to be one or the other. Right? Actually, we're Arsenal in. Um, Elliot, I'd love to bring you in, man. It's been a rough few weeks, man. It's been a real rough ride. And, I'm a massive fan of your podcast. I listen to yourself and Clive and Paul and Tim a lot. And it seems that every single time we're talking, it seems that it's always about Mikel Arteta. And I want to get your thoughts about the last three results in particular, because we were going on a nice little run. And now it's gone a little bit wrong at Palace, Brighton and Southampton. Everybody said 9 points. They were all getting really confident the way we were playing. The injuries have definitely caused some problems, but of course the questions are pointing towards the manager again. So I want to know where you stand and where you kind of put the blame in relation to the last three results that we've had.
Yeah, I mean, the title of the pod we're about to put out is Ambivalence, which
Wow.
when I was younger, I wrongly thought meant you don't care. And then I found out actually it means you care very strongly in both directions. And unfortunately, I think especially in a social media world and in a content creator world, you are meant to have a very specific viewpoint. But I find myself unable to have that very specific viewpoint because I don't want to be a hypocrite. During the run we had from December to April, I not only saw good results, but I saw football that for the first time, really since Arsene Wenger left, struck me as the kind of football that could deliver the results we want consistently, that could lead us up the table and take this young team to eventually challenge for the things Arsenal Football Club should try to challenge for, like a title. I saw chance creation, I saw goals, I saw pressing, it was coordinated, and it was effective. And we weren't trying to win games 1-0, nicking it by, counterattacking after sitting in our defensive third for 45 minutes or an hour. So I don't want to be a hypocrite and say that didn't count. I also want to be a realist. And the realist in me says that whatever the cause, whatever the reason, very few managers are going to get 3 seasons to show that they're making progress. Chelsea did make the switch to Ten Hag, and Liverpool switched to Klopp when they had, a decent manager, and United have Chelsea switched to Tuchel, obviously. United have switched to Ten Hag. And you see the impact that makes rather quickly. I realize we're in a very different situation and we're trusting the process, but I do accept the people that are frustrated that say it shouldn't take this long. The question becomes, should Arsenal be able to achieve more than we have under this manager? And that's a very, very difficult question to answer because we recognize that the squad had been built so poorly that we needed to rip it up and start from scratch. And that started last summer. Now, the irony is the players we signed last summer, I think, have performed better than we maybe expected. And so to some extent, now there's an expectation that we should be further along in the process. When actually moves like re-signing Aubameyang and having to get rid of the Ozil contract and the Willian contract and things like that, there was a lot of work that had to be done to rebuild the squad. So I think ultimately, honestly, Dan, what it boils down to is, do you think the run we were on from December to April is a reflection of the kind of football we can consistently play under Arteta as we strengthen the squad? Or do you think it's just another sort of purple patch and that the uneven performances more reflect him? For me, right now at least, I'm inclined to think it is a reflection of the direction that he can take us. But I'll admit that I have my doubts. They're just not the overwhelming part of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, and I think it's sensible to look at it like that because there are some people that have a little bit of an understanding that we are doing some things right. And I was one who said all along that I could start to see a little bit more of a style of play. My question was, why has it taken 2 years to get that style of play? When, let's look at somebody like Patrick Vieira, who's come in at Crystal Palace and hasn't had the, resources perhaps that Mikel Arteta's had, and certainly the backing in terms financially. And he's got a philosophy and a style of play there, and he's recruited very well. So I'm not saying that Vieira's the next Arsenal manager and that it's all going to be rosy if we have him. But what I'm saying is that it needs to be kind of comparable and realistic, in my opinion. But I wanted to stick with you about one thing, Elliot, because at the moment, one thing Arsenal is struggling with is scoring goals. And it's crazy that I'm even saying that because under Emery and Wenger, we were scoring goals. That was one thing that we could do. It was the fact we were conceding them. And although we're starting to concede goals again now, it seems quite a lot because we've got some injury problems. It's not scoring them that is the problem. Do you think, and a lot of people are saying this now, Elliot, that January has come back to bite us? That's something I've said. Do you think that striker situation was something that we kind of missed out on?
So this is where I do have strong feelings and I don't feel ambivalent. I think we've made a lot of mistakes from a squad building standpoint and nobody wants to hear about them. And there has been this sort of willingness to accept that certain things had to happen. And, I don't want to be argumentative, but like we're meant to accept that Aubameyang had to leave the club. Now, maybe he did. I'm not saying that he didn't, but we don't know that. And we certainly know that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang starting up front instead of Eddie Nketiah starting up front, like that is an upgrade. Even if you think he was in decline or he wasn't playing well for us, we made that choice. We made the choice not to strengthen in January, but we made the choice to re-sign Aubameyang going into his 30s, past his prime. We made the choice to keep Eddie Nketiah last January, not this past one, but the one before when we could have sent him out, made money for him, and replaced him. And all these little decisions. Oh, we can't sell Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Then we give him away in January when it clearly leaves us light. We can't sell Eddie Nketiah. Then, we find that we don't have the striker strength that we need at a critical period when top four is available to us. Or how can you not re-sign Aubameyang? Clearly, he's our best player. And then you wind up in a position where you're giving him away in a window where you've left yourself with no stopgap, no options in a season where the top four is available to you. So we made some decisions that I think a lot of fans supported because in general, I think it's very easy to convince fans that when players aren't behaving right or they don't have the right attitude, they should go. And I get that. And I'm not saying that players should be allowed to behave however they want. But there's also the reality that as a club, you have to leave yourself in a position where you can compete. And I'm not convinced that we've done that. And it's a cascading number of decisions from keeping Nketiah 2 Januaries ago, keeping Maitland-Niles when we had an offer. I think was it Wolves that wanted to pay us for him? And then, letting him go, the Aubameyang situation. And so, yes, the squad is thin and injuries have hurt us, but we have also made decisions that we didn't have to make that have left us in that position. And I am more inclined to actually get behind Arteta's tactical side of his performance. Like, I think as a coach, I clearly see a guy that can coach. Like, I don't think there's any debate about that. He understands the tactics. I think he can make adjustments. I think he can coach. In terms of whether we're getting the squad building right, I think we were very quick to pat ourselves on the back about last summer and say, oh, we hit a home run 10 out of 10. All these players are amazing. And yet we're looking at a team that's probably going to score fewer goals and concede more this season than we did last season. So the question of whether we prioritize the right areas is an open one. And I'm not saying any of this angrily or I know better. None of that. Just I think there's been a presumption that we got it right, that I don't know that it's borne out by the results or by the underlying metrics. So I still have some questions about whether we've figured out how to build this squad appropriately.
I think it's sensible to question mark that, and I really do believe January has come back to bite us. I was amazed that we let that amount of players go and didn't replace them. Matisse, I want to get your point quickly on that as well, because you had a situation very similarly with Lukaku in terms of disciplinary outside of football with some of the comments that he made. And Thomas Tuchel dealt with things very differently to how Mikel Arteta dealt with it. It seems from looking in the outside, looking in, that Mikel Arteta was just told, you know what, I'm done. See you later, Aubameyang. You've now got another club. Thomas Tuchel, albeit hasn't worked out for Lukaku as such. Lukaku is in and around the squad still, and he's trying to do what he can to keep him in and around the mix. I want to get your thoughts on that quickly, and Arsenal's January transfer window, and what if you think there was a mistake made there in terms of letting players go without replacing them.
I think I'll separate the two. I think there was a mistake not getting the extra midfielder because that was a clear weakness that was identified last summer. You knew you needed another midfielder. You had Partey in there. You had Xhaka. You had no real depth after that. Lokonga's too young. Another Arteta signing, and we mentioned that on our show. And then also you've also got El Neni. Now, some signings have definitely done more than what we expected. But like you mentioned earlier, Dan, as well when we spoke, Lokonga, Cedric, these are also part of his, Tavares, these are his signings as well. So if you can't trust these guys to come in, that is your problem and your fault because you signed them. It's under your tenure. It's the same thing I say with Oli when he was maybe having to use Telles or he wasn't using Van der Beek. You sign these players. So if you sign them and now they're depth and you can't trust them or you don't want to use them, that is also your fault. So for me, not getting the midfielder in January doesn't make any sense, especially Bruno Guimaraes in the comments there. That is a player that Arsenal have been tracking for years. Very, very, very good footballer. So he plays the style of football you're looking at. He fills a position that you're weak in as well, that you haven't had in a while in terms of a DM. So he ticks all the boxes. And he would have made Partey play better as well, because when you've got that partnership, which is solid, I still think you can improve on Xhaka. It only makes the player next to him play even better. So that's something that should have easily been identified and sorted in January. The striker's a bit more complicated because you've got to get one out to probably bring one in, the wage bill, etc. But again, I don't have a massive thing with Aubameyang leaving. I thought Aubameyang leaving was a good decision based on the fact that, yes, from a quality perspective, you're dropping off by not having him. But if you look at the top teams, Liverpool, Manchester City, there's never any drama. And I feel like that's where Chelsea have really messed up as well by having drama. Lukaku, having his interview, this takes away from the squad harmony. It's a distraction. You don't see that much coming out from these two, managers and teams in terms of off the pitch nonsense. It never happens. Liverpool, I don't think I've ever heard anything coming out for Klopp. Pep had a couple, maybe Torres knocking on his door. He was gone in a matter of weeks. Sané was gone too. So they keep a lid on these things. And I think that's important to do, especially when Arteta's quite young as a manager. To have any sort of authority, you are going to have to maybe be even more aggressive in your approach to earn that respect, because you don't have the CV to back it up. However, you have to replace him. You can't get rid of Aubameyang and then expect Nketiah, who has no Premier League goals, to replace him. Lacazette, who's turned into this budget Giroud / Firmino, kind of link-up player, and think that you're suddenly going to, and let's not kid ourselves. Yes, Saka, Smith Rowe, great seasons. These are the players I rate at Arsenal, Martinelli, but they're not goal scorers in terms of your Salahs and Manes. They're not going to make up for the lack of goals centrally. So I think you shot yourselves in the foot a little bit. And I said it at the time when January was going on. I said, whoever takes advantage of this window, be in West Ham, Arsenal, or Tottenham, Man United shouldn't even need to bring in anyone. They're just crippling. Whoever takes advantage of the window is going to make top four most likely. West Ham had the Czech Republic investment from a shareholder. They didn't do anything to help their depth with Europa League, but they may win the Europa League, so it may not matter. Arsenal didn't do anything. You just got rid of your depth and didn't bring anyone in. And Tottenham brought in Kulusevski to balance out their forwards and brought in Bentancur. So they had the best January, and they're looking the strongest right now.
Yeah, and I think you're talking sense, mate. And I've said before that the manager has definitely got a big part to play in it, and I believe that Conte has as well. And I know that Spurs lost at the weekend, which is great. But Conte, for me, is definitely looking to be, one, in that elite level, but two, taking them forward. Elliot, I just want to touch on something before we do go into the Chelsea Get preview game, because I appreciate we're talking quite a lot heavily about Arsenal and their problems. But I think it's important with the Aubameyang thing. I'm getting bored of talking about it, if I'm honest with you, and I'm sure you are too. He's scoring goals at Barcelona. I don't think that's a shock to anybody. I predicted that he would. But I want to ask this question. Is there a problem with our style of play going forward? Because Arteta's not signed a forward yet in 2.5 years, and the ones that he's actually looked at utilising there aren't really getting many goals. I think Aubameyang's his top scorer with around about 8 or 9. Pepe got 16 in all competitions, but he's more of a kind of winger. He seems to like him on that right-hand side. Do you fear that maybe Aubameyang, it's the frustration of him scoring goals? Do you fear that perhaps it wasn't Aubameyang's fault that he wasn't scoring and that he is now scoring for Barcelona? Or is that just harsh on Arteta?
It's tough because it's probably a little bit of both. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but the reality is that during our good run, TM, from December to April, leaving out the January period where we played in the cups and we had players missing, we didn't struggle to create chances and score goals. I mean, we didn't. The actual scores of the game back that up, and the underlying metrics behind it back that up. We were playing a system that seemed to get the best out of that Odegaard-Saka pod on the right, that let Martinelli sort of play what was the Aubameyang role, but play it, I think, better than Aubameyang had been playing it from the left. Lacazette was stitching things together, and it was working, and we were scoring goals. But everything works until it doesn't. It got sussed out a little bit, maybe. We also lost players that were key to it. I think that whole run depended pretty heavily on Thomas Partey playing like a golden god. He hit a level that we had always sort of hoped maybe he could, but hadn't seen. Ironically, it came right after he had expressed that he had been hitting about 4 out of 10, and then suddenly he was 10 out of 10 every week. So I think when it was working, the issue wasn't the personnel, but it was always a bit fragile. I think we've seen that now, and there has been a persistent issue under Arteta of creating sufficient chances and scoring enough goals. So then the question becomes, is it the players or is it the manager? And that is the age-old question, right? When a team doesn't perform, there's one of two things that people like to point to. The players are crap or the manager is crap. I do think the fact that we've committed to very young players means you're going to get more inconsistency than you will at other teams. You referenced having Salah and Mane versus Saka and Martinelli. Well, with any luck, maybe someday Saka, Martinelli, Smith Rowe reach that level, but they're certainly not there at 20 years old. And so they're going to have patches where they look world class and patches where they struggle with their consistency. But I definitely think that the issue with Aubameyang not being replaced goes back more to the decisions that we made previously to re-sign him, to keep Eddie Nketiah, to not start succession planning when we should have. I think the problem for this club, more than buying, has been selling and an unwillingness to start the next cycle. So if you go way back, you can see we didn't sell Aaron Ramsey and we wound up losing him for free. And we didn't sell Alexis Sanchez and we lost him for Mkhitaryan. And we didn't sell Ozil and we just committed to re-signing him, which was a disaster. And we didn't sell Aubameyang and we re-signed him. And all along the way, there's this fear of moving on. We didn't sell Granit Xhaka, right? We decided to stick with him. And so I think it's these things more than anything, the stasis, the unwillingness to say the next cycle is going and we have to go with it right now. And so we wind up with these players who are past their best, not able to give us what we need, not really part of the future, and they have one leg in the past and one leg in the future, and then it doesn't work. And we, in some instances, we wind up paying them to leave. So yeah, I just think this is a club that has to be more willing to make those kinds of sacrifices. If we had Aubameyang right now, we would be better. Let's have no illusions about that. There's no scenario where having Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang right now is worse than not having him. We're starting Eddie Nketiah up front with the best will in the world to him. He will be playing his football at a lower level next season. So that decision may have been right in the moment, but it left us thin. And I think it left us that way because of successive windows of not being willing to take the hard choice. The problem with putting it all in January, Dan, is that when you laser focus on one window, then you're saying, well, we should have done something. But I would argue that one of the worst things Arsenal has done in the past several seasons is exactly that, right? Go get Willian to patch things up, or go get Dennis Suarez on loan, right? Go get, whoever's available and make it work. And we don't want to go back to doing that. I think you can agree. So
100%.
I'm open to the idea that the right striker solution may not have been available in January. What I firmly believe is we should not have put ourselves in a position where our entire season was down to finding our future center forward in a January window. Like that's not good planning.
It's really not. I agree with everything you've said. Matisse, let's talk Chelsea.
Do we have to?
I know. This is always the bit that I don't mind, when we say, let's talk Norwich or let's talk Burnley, but now let's talk Chelsea. It's always difficult, man. But a good weekend for you, a bad weekend for us, and to be fair, for Tottenham as well. But Chelsea are a strange one for me because I look at what you're doing and I look at what Thomas Tuchel's doing. A lot of people tipped you to win the league this season, Matisse. Yeah. And I didn't. And the reason I didn't was because I didn't think you were as strong as Man City or Chelsea, Man City or Liverpool. I just didn't. And I just had this feeling that Lukaku was going to come to the Premier League and do what Lukaku does, and that's score goals. But I didn't feel personally like it was going to be enough. I still think you needed more. And then the fact that Lukaku hasn't actually worked out for you this season has obviously affected you. But going forward, Chelsea are a strange one. There's nobody I look at going forward and think, wow, like he's got 30 goals a season in him, or he's an absolute killer in front of goal. So I think there's some weaknesses there. However, saying that, it's ironic of me to say that Chelsea have got some weaknesses coming from an Arsenal perspective at the moment. But what have you made of your kind of season, and where does this Premier League game against Arsenal leave you? Because this is a more important game for us, I would say. I know that, of course, you want to win it, but Chelsea are kind of pretty much safe, can't win the title. I think you're definitely in the Champions League. So where do you sit with what Chelsea have done this season in the league?
In the league, I think from a fan base standpoint, we definitely got way too excited. I think we felt that Lukaku was the final piece, especially because we also expected our other attackers to improve in their second season as well. And they haven't really kicked on. The likes of Werner, the likes of Ziyech, the likes of even Kai Havertz. Yes, he's been good. I think he's been one of our better attackers, but there's still more ways to go for him. But he is someone that I've got more faith in than some of the others. Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi, these guys, none of them have really kicked on at all and put up some of the statistics that we were hoping that we would put up in terms of now we're looking for the extra bit of improvement. So, yeah, we definitely got ahead of ourselves on that one. But yeah, Lukaku just hasn't fitted in. He hasn't been that difference maker from from a social situation as well. He hasn't really made the group stronger in terms of the atmosphere and the environment, because obviously of what he did with the interview. And then on the pitch as well, we've struggled to adjust to him tactically. He needs a lot of service. I think he came in with this whole, PR, interviews with, being very multifaceted and multidimensional, and a player that we are not really going to have to adapt to so much because he's improved in Italy. And that's obviously not the case. So he's someone that we have to really, really service. And I think modern football is going in a way where strikers are not really just there to be serviced. You have to get involved in the play. Look at Benzema, you're dropping deep, you're linking up the play, you're scoring headers, you're setting up opportunities. You look at Harry Kane at Tottenham, we don't like to say it, but he's ridiculously good at what he does. He drops deep, he creates chances for Son, for Kulusevski, he's passing it out wide. And that's how most of that's how most forwards now are. It's only really Erling Haaland that you could say is the old-fashioned, out and out P&P number 9, still up there doing the business, and he scores at an alarming rate. His finishing is ridiculous, and his movement is great. Lukaku can be quite static and stationary, especially in the last few months. But you look at City, you look at Liverpool, they don't really have static number 9s. They've got a lot smaller, interchangeable forwards. So I just think Chelsea have gone down this road of what we're used to, which is Costa, Drogba, Torres, Shevchenko. We're just used to 9s. And I think now we've learned, oh shit, we might have to actually do something different and maybe try and get goals from out wide, get goals from midfield, up the creativity, because the creativity right now is, there's not really any elite passer in Chelsea's team, is what I'll say. We talk about, we had Fabregas, you had Fabregas, you talk about, Arsenal had a lot of great passes. You played some great football under Wenger. We had Lampard. We had some elite passes that could really put the ball, spot runs. They were doing some analysis against Palace at half time. We weren't spotting some of Werner's runs. We don't really have an elite passer. Ziyech was meant to be that, but he's inconsistent and he's injury prone. Kova has improved that, but it's still not something that you can put at a world class, passing level. And the rest of them, they don't get near. The best chance creators we have are Chilwell and James in the wing back position. So similar to Liverpool in respects there, but Liverpool, when you look at their front three, they put the ball in the back of the net. So yeah, I think for us, we just maybe are falling into where we've always been in the last 3 or 4 years, which is 3rd, 4th, 5th, which is kind of normal for us. But then obviously circumstances and factors have to be at play here. Stewardship, that has taken a massive toll on Tuchel, I think, and the club. That's a big change at the top. It's been a big conversation for ages, and we've finally come towards the end of it. And we did struggle, with injuries, and we tried to rely upon our depth, and it really didn't size up to what we thought it would. Sal Niguez, players like this, Alonso, these guys just haven't stood up and been counted for when it comes to depth and coming in and actually doing and playing at the level of the starters as well in that winter period. So, but at the end of the day, I'm still happy because I can see this manager in his first full season. I can see exactly the level of manager he is. He makes mistakes. He takes full accountability. He doesn't play the blame game and just push it all onto his players. Poor result and maybe poor decisions against Real Madrid, bounce back, players still fighting for him second leg. They come and put a performance in. And he's reached every single final outside of that, now being knocked out of the Champions League, another final now in the FA Cup, to add to last year's Carabao, Super Cup, Champions League, Club World Cup. So he's doing brilliant in that respect. So once we start to hopefully get rid of some of the players we need to get rid of, get a bit better from an ownership standpoint in terms of recruitment as well for scouts and actually buying sensibly and not just splashing money on people that have high statistics in Europe for goals, and actually seeing profile and how they work. Look at Liverpool, Robertson from Hull City. No one would have said you need to spend 8 million on Robertson, but they did it. But then when they need to splash on Van Dijk and Alisson, they get it done. They go and get Diaz in January. That's great scouting. He fits the mold. So we need to start acquiring players that fit one philosophy, but that's only going to happen when you have one manager for a long period of time, which is what we need to have. So yeah, I think this season, it's a humbling season for us, but it's also still a good season. We've learned that City and Liverpool, yeah, that's not a season away. You've actually got to work for that.
Yeah, and listen, Tommy Tuchel loves to get into a final, doesn't he? I mean, every single competition he's either won it or got to a final. It's unbelievable the record he's had. He's a real good, real elite manager, mate. And I think personally, it looks rather silly now when Lampard and Arteta were pretty much eighth and ninth back in 2021. You pulled the plug and went and got him, and I think that we should have done that, and I stand by that decision because I think that what you've done is absolutely the right thing in getting that manager in that's elite, can take you to that level. But I just want to stay with you quickly, Matisse, about Wednesday night. What's your thoughts going into this one on Chelsea v Arsenal, man? What are you thinking?
I'm confident, but I'm also wary of the fact that you guys did the double over us last year, and that you need to bounce back from 3 defeats. So there surely has to be a kickback at some point. However, that shouldn't be something that we allow to happen. We can't be complacent. I know we've just got to the FA Cup final. The final's not for another month, mid-May. Up until that time, I'm not expecting this team to coast, to just chill on the beach. No, you need to put in the performances. You need to fight for your positions to play in the final, first of all. And second of all, if we want to prove that we're not on the level of the Arsenals, the Uniteds, the Tottenhams, the only way to actually do that is to put points gap in between these teams at the end of the season and say, look, we are not involved in this conversation. And as well as we've done in all these competitions, yes, we've won the Champions League. Like I said, for the last 3-4 years, we've been finishing third, fourth, and fifth. Fifth under Conte, fourth under Lampard, third under Sarri, fourth under Tuchel last year. And last year we finished fourth via Aston Villa, beating Tottenham, I believe. Or sorry, Gareth Bale did some sort of madness at the end of the season and won. And Leicester then fell out, something like that. So we didn't even finish fourth last year on our own accord. Season before, Mason Mount had to score a free kick on the final day to make it happen. So as much as we're champions of Europe and champions of the world, and that's lovely, love the songs, keep it up. We are doing it on a cup basis. On a league standpoint, we can still be much better. And we haven't won the title since 2017. And it's very quick to get complacent. And then next thing you know, it's 10 years and not 5. And then you're Man United. So we do need to sort ourselves out a bit in the league. And then I think what we need to do there is, like I said, I'm looking at points to the top. If we've improved, then I'm hoping for a points gap of maybe 7 points to the top. 7, 6, 8 points is what I was hoping for. If we're not going to win it, at least cut the points gap down so I can say we've improved and then we go again. But if we finish 10, 12 points off the top because we've got complacent, that looks stupid.
One thing it does when I listen to you, Matisse, talking there is it makes me realise how far we've fallen. You're upset with third, you're upset with since 2017. There's a title with us, it's 2004, and it just shows how bad things have got for us. But I love the fact that you demand the best, and that's what I think we should be doing as a fan base, is raising the standards. Elliot, let's come to you on Wednesday night. This is probably the worst game that we can have after the 3 defeats in a row. One of, let's say, probably Man City and Liverpool would be the other 2. Do you have any confidence going into this game, and how do you think we can beat this Chelsea side?
I have confidence, which may sound ridiculous, but I think it's based on a number of factors. I mean, first of all, you could argue that one of the problems for this team has just been pressure. Young players, absent some of their more senior leaders like Partey and Tierney, crumbling under the pressure of knowing that top 4 is there. I think, it's funny. There was that whole kerfuffle about us celebrating wins over Wolves or celebrating wins over Villa. Don't celebrate. What are you celebrating for? It's ridiculous. But I think in those celebrations, what you saw is how much this meant to these young players, how bad they wanted it. And maybe they wanted it just a little too much, and some of their composure has left them under the white hot spotlight and the pressure of getting back into the Champions League. And so now maybe if it feels gone a little bit and you're away and you're at Chelsea and nobody really expects anything of you again, maybe some of that pressure lifts. I also think absent Thomas Partey, absent Tierney, absent Tomiyasu, maybe we're not as well equipped to play front-footed football. And so maybe going away to Chelsea gives us a chance to play a little bit more on the counter, a little bit less proactive, which isn't how I'd like to see us play over a season, but maybe in an individual game suits us a little better. Martinelli running away from players. You saw how dynamic Martinelli looked against Liverpool, for example. And granted, it didn't come to anything, but I think these players might just be able to do a little better with some of the pressure off and some of the pressure to dominate and dictate the game off of them. My other hope is just that Chelsea aren't as invested in the game, right? I mean, a cup final on the horizon, out of the Champions League. I really think third place pretty well cemented for them. So, not that they're not going to care, but we'll probably see some rotation. And granted, a rotated Chelsea team may still be better than Arsenal's available team right now. But I think the combination of lack of motivation and rotation from Chelsea with maybe a lifting of some pressure and expectation and an ability to play a little more reactive than proactive, all those factors may benefit us. I'm not prepared to believe that everything that was good about us is just gone now. We were bad against Palace. We were outworked. They won the physical battles. Against Brighton, we were just sort of stale. But against Southampton, we controlled the game. We just couldn't break them down. I think these players can still get it done. And the thing with young players is, on any given day, they can rise to the level of their talent. And, if Saka has one of his better games, or Martinelli has one of his better games, or Odegaard, rediscovers his best form, for one night, that could be enough. Much in the same way that Tottenham are capable of beating Manchester City and losing to Burnley, I think that characteristic is true of Arsenal right now as well, for different reasons. They have a world-class set of strikers that can win them any game, even though they're not a great team. We have world-class young players whose quality is going to fluctuate game to game. So a long way of saying that maybe we get a little bit of a weaker Chelsea and we see a little more of a freer Arsenal, and those two things combine for us to be able to get it done.
Elliot, let's stay with you in terms of team news, because we've seen that we've got some injury problems. Do you think that Mikel Arteta is going to try anything different against Chelsea? I.e., are we going to see Martinelli through the middle instead of Eddie Nketiah? Or are we going to see a similar team that played against Southampton, do you think?
Well, this is the thing. Clive on our podcast has a saying that the manager's in the washing machine, when he sort of like loses his philosophy and his sense of clarity and starts reaching. And I definitely think Arteta's back in the washing machine now. He's clearly looking for answers. He tried to keep the system the same against Brighton and using Xhaka at left back. That didn't work. He brought Tavares in, and I thought he played okay against Southampton, went to more of a 4-2-3-1, swapped Martinelli and Saka on the flanks. That didn't work. So I have no idea what he's going to think the answer is right now. I mean, maybe he will go to a Smith Rowe, Martinelli, Saka front three. Maybe he'll stick with Nketiah. I don't get the sense. I don't know if Lacazette will be available based on the COVID situation, if it is even, I presume it's COVID situation, so what the club has said. But I think we will see something similar to what we did against Southampton, is just my guess. Assuming that Lacazette is not available. If Lacazette's available, I expect him to come back in and start. And then we will go back to what we did against Southampton, just with Lacazette in there. But don't get me wrong. I don't think we're going to go and dominate Chelsea and win the game and everything's going to be right. I just think that the extent to which people are now convinced that we are a disaster maybe overstates the reality of what the team is. So it's not a hopeless cause. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, fair play, mate. Matisse, talk to me about your team news on Wednesday night, because, we saw Kovacic come off with an injury, which is probably a good news for Arsenal. Although Loftus-Cheek came in and was great, I thought, against Crystal Palace at the weekend. So have you got any injury news, or do you think it'll be a similar side?
Yeah, Cover rolled his ankle, I think, and came off. I still haven't been able to read and listen to the full extent of that injury, but I don't think he'll be available against Arsenal. That's a huge loss, because he's been carrying our midfield. He's probably our best midfielder. He is our best midfielder and most balanced one as well. So I'm a bit worried about that situation. And then the rest of the team is kind of similar. Lukaku was just coming back. Hudson-Odoi is still out. Chilwell's out. I think the key thing for me is that the right-hand side of Saka, Alonso, I hope that he's continuing at his form, because I never get ahead of myself with Alonso, because even though he's playing well at the moment, he's always due a clanger. This is why he needs to leave in the summer, regardless of how the season ends. I'm completely been done with him for years. And Saka's obviously one of your brightest sparks. So he's quite pacey, he's quite tricky. He obviously wants to get involved and get goals and whatnot. I think you're saying he's your joint top scorer before. So we need to watch him. That's our biggest area where I always keep an eye on, is the left-hand side. I think Reece James has been phenomenal. He's been pocketing, Zaha, and he's pocketed Vinicius. The only time Vinicius got away was when he was going around other players and got the assist. So I think the rest of the backline, if they play to their maximum, we're pretty sorted in that department. And then the midfield battle is interesting, because you guys are obviously suffering with a lack of balance there. Are you going to play, Tavares? Are you going to play Xhaka in the middle? What's going to happen there? I think we should be able to dominate that even with cover out. Loftus-Cheek's been good recently. He can play a role in there. We just need to get the midfield balance right. And that's our biggest issue, is because we don't have the other six in midfield. We don't have the Rodri, the Fabinho, the Casemiro. We don't have the holding midfielder who just gives you that other side of the game. It's just Jorginho, who's quite specific and obviously is not a physically imposing DM. The other midfielders are all box to box. So sometimes there's gaps left to be exploited, which I don't like to see. We saw it against Palace in the first half. So but yeah, outside of all that, we should be winning this game. We got the forwards. Someone should be able to get a goal. When we can never rely upon anyone, like you said earlier, to get 20, 30 goals. But there's enough people there with enough experience and enough different traits and ability to get some sort of goal you'd expect. But yeah, we shouldn't be taking Arsenal lightly at all.
Who do you think, Matisse, is like the players to watch? I mean, you mentioned a couple of key battles there. Where do you think our danger will be come that Wednesday?
Key battle will be definitely Saka versus Alonso down that side. I think also if Loftus-Cheek starts, I think him versus potentially Xhaka, because Xhaka is one of those players, I don't think he's good enough to be a starter for a team that is looking to be in the top four. I've seen him, over the years have a few rash moments. If someone's dribbling at him and he gets booked, or we can get him booked and maybe get him riled up and lose his head, that could be a game changer. If we start to get people around him, especially when he doesn't have Partey to help him in there from a mobility standpoint, and you're maybe looking at Lokonga, who's a lot younger as well. If he starts, I don't know if he's going to drop Odegaard into midfield like he did before, and take him out of that more advanced role. So there's a lot going on in that midfield that I can see a lot of mayhem if we get our guys playing at our best. And Werner's been playing well recently. He's had a good week. However, we are starting to think that the dimensions of the pitch is the reason why. We've been measuring Bernabeu and Wembley, and these pitches are bigger than Stamford Bridge. So it might just be a gazelle in the wild type situation where he's just got more open space to run into, and therefore he's just living life. Whether he can do it now at home against a team that might sit off and look for counters, I don't know how Arsenal are going to approach this because they need to win. But regardless, he's not going to get the same space that he got at Wembley and he gets at the Bernabeu. So, and obviously Southampton played an extremely high line against us in the 6-0 beatdown. So I don't expect you guys to do that. If you see Werner play, I expect you guys immediately to drop off 10 yards or 15. So, it's going to be interesting, but this is a big game for a lot of our players, because I think this is the kind of game where we could get complacent like we did at the back end of last year, where we thought, we focus on the Champions League, or we're focusing on this or focusing on that. We need to also focus on the Premier League and just finish this season up properly.
Yeah, fair comments, Matisse. Elliot, let's come to you about Chelsea, because maybe I'm a bit harsh when I say this, but I don't actually look at one of their players going forward and think, right, we need to keep them quiet. Probably Kai Havertz would be the one I'd go for if I was to say, had to pick one. And I don't want that to come across disrespectfully to Matisse, because obviously that's not saying that at all, because I still think Chelsea have got some quality players. But I think what I'm getting at is there one danger man here at Chelsea? Have we got kind of more of a team ethic with this Chelsea side, Elliot?
Well, I'm obligated legally to say that Christian Pulisic is a huge threat that we should be mindful of, right, by nationality, and hopefully a huge threat to England in the winter. But that's another story. First of all, it's hard for me to say because I don't know who Chelsea will definitely put out there. I mean, obviously in the first game we played this season, Lukaku ragdolled Pablo Mari, and the only really good center forward game he's had that I've seen all season. So it gives you a sense of the standard of center backs that we had at the time. I think it's difficult, right? Because fullback right now is not a strength for us defensively. I like Nuno Tavares, but I think defensively he can be a little bit positionally naive, and Cedric, I think, can be beaten. Obviously, having Tomiyasu and Tierney there would make that a lot different. We're also seeing, I think, the worst run of form collectively from Ben White and Gabriel Magalhaes that we've seen this season. So the whole back line in general leaves me a little concerned. I think it is a collective issue, and that's why I do think that if we have the chance to sit a little deeper and be a little more compact in this game, that will help us. The funny thing is, I think Chelsea are a team that you can go and press. I don't know that I think, and Matisse, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think sometimes the center backs are not as good as they could be with the ball at their feet. I mean, maybe that's not the case. I know that I've seen them make some errors, but maybe I'm over-indexing some of the individual mistakes that have been made. But I just don't. I think if we get stretched, we're going to get killed by whoever Chelsea puts out on the wings in particular. So I think Dan, I think it's a collective thing. I think we have to be compact, and we just have to be a little bit more pragmatic in this game, because the unit that we're putting out individually, I don't think is as good defensively. So it has to be a collective effort and a counterattacking performance is the way I see it right now.
Fair play. Elliot, I want to ask you this. If it gets to a stage where we're struggling again to score goals, what would you like to see Mikel Arteta do to utilise or try something a little bit different? Because there's options there on the bench. He's got Pepe, I think, should be utilised a lot more. Smith Rowe has not seemed to be getting a look in of late. It seems that he's kind of switching between him and Martinelli, and putting Eddie into the side for me just is even more of a crazy decision. Or maybe Martinelli could go down the middle. Like, is there something different that you think he could do if Lacazette is out?
I'd do that. I'd do that. I mean, first of all, I know that the first job is to win games right now. You know, whatever we think is the best solution, the most important one is the one that works. But neither Lacazette nor Eddie Nketiah are the future of Arsenal. They will both be gone in a matter of 7 games. So in the absence of something working, why not see if you've got something in Gabriel Martinelli through the middle? Find out if that's a thing. Because if that's a thing and a thing that works, it makes the job this summer a lot easier too. All right, you're still going to have to go add a striker, but you may not have to add 2. You know, maybe you add a winger instead. I'd be fine with seeing Pepe play there. He played there a little bit at the end of the Southampton game. I don't think that there's anything about Eddie Nketiah that says he has to play there. And I kind of have this theory. Absent players who are clearly working in a position, just put your best talent on the pitch, right? I mean, just put your best talent out there. Lukaku is clearly the best center forward that Chelsea have. But Chelsea don't use them because they have players that are playing better, that are more talented, they can put on the pitch right now. And I think Martinelli, Smith Rowe, and Saka is our most talented front 3 right now, and they are the future of the club, so give it a try. Now, Nicola Pepe is clearly a very talented player, and I would be using him more. But it's kind of shouting into the wind at this point because it's pretty clear that Mikel Arteta is not going to do that. So, we can say he should. What does it really matter? We know he's not inclined to start Nicola Pepe. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if his Arsenal career is 7 games away from being over. So, go with the players who are the future of the club. Try that. And at a minimum, if you come 6th and, it's disappointing, maybe you get some information that can be valuable to you going in the summer. Wow, it's a disappointing end of the season, but Martinelli really showed us something for those last 7 games at center forward. He might be an option there going into next season. That would be worth knowing, right? Whereas knowing that Eddie Nketiah can't score Premier League goals doesn't feel super helpful to me right now. So, yeah, I would be doing anything but that, frankly.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I'm a bit frustrated that we haven't seen the best of Nicolas Pepe this season. He scored 16 goals last season in all competitions, and he's a player that I think no matter how frustrating he can be at times, he delivers and he gets you goals. And he does get criticism because he's a lot of money, and he does get criticism because at times he looks lazy. He does get criticism because at times his touch is off, and he's frustrating as hell sometimes, but he does deliver. And if he's not scoring goals, he's assisting or creating chances. And I don't think we can afford to leave that on the bench when we're struggling to score goals. So I think that could be an answer there, staring Mikel Arteta in the face to try to utilise more. I'm not saying he deserves to start up front. I'm not saying he deserves to play 90 minutes, but he certainly deserves to play more than 15 to 20 coming off on the bench. And we're probably, on most of the time at the moment, losing games. And we're asking him to turn it around for us. And I think that's a little bit harsh, personally.
I wonder what Mikel Arteta would have thought of coaching a player like Alexis Sanchez, right? Because another player who gave the ball away a lot, freelanced a lot, didn't always work inside of a structure, but he could win you games. He could win you a cup final against Chelsea, as it turns out, right?
Yep.
Those kind of players are misunderstood. And I think Aubameyang falls into this category, by the way, of players who 90% of the game will drive you nuts, but they'll win it for you. And in a low-scoring sport, and as hard as it is to score goals, and we're finding that out painfully right now, I don't think you can have the luxury as a manager of being a guy who doesn't want to play guys that have goals in their boots. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I have to agree. Matisse, what's your thoughts there? Do you think Arsenal can do something different moving forward? Because we're struggling at the moment, mate, in terms of goals. And what's your thoughts on Pepe?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I look at this Nketiah situation, I do think Martinelli should be up there. I think he's way more talented. He's a good finisher. He can head the ball. And it's not as if he takes away from the team in terms of the pressing up top and the work rate to be able to run into the channels. He's very technical as well. So I don't really understand that. Saka, as much as he's done things on the right, he's also shown that he can be capable on the left if you were to try and squeeze Pepe in on the right. For me, Pepe is obviously not worth his price tag. You've massively maybe got it wrong there. I think that his stats may have been inflated a little bit at Lille with the amount of penalties that he scored as well, and the way that he scored his goals, similar to the way Werner scores his goals, is running in behind on the last line of defence often and take advantage of the space. And I've not really seen Pepe, do that at Arsenal. If we're talking about a player that needs to run in behind, like a Theo Walcott, maybe potentially type player, I'm not really seeing many opportunities where Pepe is running in behind, defenses and one-on-one with the goalkeeper. I'm just not seeing that very often. So it's a little bit of a mismatch, I think. Statistically, it seems like he's done okay last year, but a lot of that was in the Europa League against some quite poor teams as well. I don't think he had a big impact on the Premier League at all, from what I saw. So I think this is a player that you could potentially definitely offload. Whether he could be useful now, 100%, because listen, you don't have any other option. You have no choice but to try and use him. Maybe, just maybe, it might light a fire inside him to have the opportunity to play. You're not scoring goals anyway. So what do you have to lose is the question I'd always ask, is that, if you're struggling to score goals in your current format and you know that you haven't got an opportunity to change that until the transfer window, why would you not try and use Pepe and see what he can do in some capacity, even if it is bringing him on earlier off the bench, or changing the formation of the front line, maybe going with, a different format, maybe front two, Martinelli pulling off to the left, Pepe pulling off to the right as a front two to press from the front. Maybe you tuck in or bring back the Sakas into midfield. We know Saka's very versatile. Odegaard is an attacking midfielder. He can drop off Smith Rowe. Maybe you could go with the two up top. I don't know, but you have to try things, especially when you're at home to like the likes of Brighton. Come on now, you should be able to find some sort of solution with all of the attacking talent you have. And they don't have, more importantly, Brighton obviously prior and obviously this week against Southampton. Yeah,
100%, bro. I'm totally with you. Before I go to the super chats and get your score predictions, I want to ask the question to both of you. I'll start with you, Elliot. Where does a loss leave Mikel Arteta? And I'm not saying that we sack him after the Chelsea game. I'm not expecting you to say that, but it's going to be 4 losses on the spin if we do lose this game. And top 4 pretty much done and dusted. Do you think he gets to the end of the season whatever? Do you think that if we're outside of the top 4 or of Europe, that it depends what his job should be on the line or not? Like, where do you stand with the manager?
Well, I started by saying ambivalent, and I'll end by saying ambivalent. Like I have serious concerns about Mikel Arteta, and I have serious reasons why I believe he could be a very good coach. I worry that maybe we will see a very, very good manager in Mikel Arteta, just not yet and just not at Arsenal. That is possible. This is his first job, and asking him to be great at it right away with all the things it requires and all the things he had to manage, COVID, the stop to the season, project restart, no fans in the stands, the issues with Ozil and Aubameyang that, a very experienced manager might have been able to navigate in a way that a first-time manager may not have. The Super League fiasco, like he's had a lot he's had to cope with. None of that is an excuse. I think there is the purely theoretical side of me that says, I think I saw enough from December to April that let's give him another season. Let's see. But then there's the realistic side of me. If this season ends in collapse and we finish with 61 points and 52 goals and 47 conceded, and it's worse than last season, and we end on a run of 7 losses out of our last 10 games, then it is going to be time for a little reality to sink in. There are not a lot of big clubs where a manager can go 8th one season, 6th or 7th the next season with a calamitous collapse at the end and survive it. So yeah, I mean, the realist in me says he probably should, if that happens, he probably should be under scrutiny for his job. Do I think he will be? No. I don't think there's any scenario where he will be. And do I think that there's no possibility that Arteta leads Arsenal where we want to go? No, I think Arteta can coach. Whether Arteta can manage a squad of very talented, egotistical players, because that's what elite level football is, we're going to see. We're going to find out. This coming summer, like, we know what we need. We need a striker. We probably need another 8, another attacking midfielder. And we absolutely 100% need this, trust the process, this project to go be a top 4 team next season. So I have doubts, but like, you can have doubts and not be all the way in or all the way out. You know what I mean, Dan? Like, there is this pressure to be like, put your chips down, feel one way or the other. And I can't. All I can see is that there are causes for doubts and things that I've seen that encourage me. I kind of want to see how the season plays out, because if we lose every game between now and the end of the season, no one's going to be having this debate. If we go on a little bit of a run and win the derby and, beat Chelsea to when is that? To Wednesday, whatever day it is today, right? Like, you know how quick this can change. Before the international break, Dan, no one was having this conversation. It's only been 3 games. So I think it's fair to just take a beat and see how the season finishes out.
Fair one. Matisse, what about yourself on Mikel? If things are going the way that things have been going, it's not looking too great for him. What's your thoughts?
Oh, if he doesn't make top 4, he's got to be sacked for me. He absolutely has to be, because there's one thing to finish behind Manchester United. There's another thing to finish behind Tottenham. And I think most Arsenal fans, from an emotional and, even level-headed standpoint, you can understand where I'm coming from when I say that, because that's a team that have taken advantage and you haven't. That's how I see it. Both of you weren't expected to be in there, and they took advantage and you didn't. January-wise, managerial-wise, quality-wise, they took advantage, beat you to top 4, and now they're ahead of schedule and you're not. So someone's got to pay the price for that. And he's been here long enough, 2.5 years. Like I said, underperformed massively last year with the 8th place finish, got everybody's expectations down to the floor. And then now suddenly a 6th is okay with no European football. I would say absolutely not. So for me, it's not like 4th or nothing was the expectation at the start of the season. But when you put it into context and you look at, okay, you were in the driving seat. You got knocked out of the FA Cup in the 3rd round. You saw Manchester United open the door. You don't take advantage of that, then you got to go. Because any top manager who's good enough for Arsenal takes advantage of that situation, and they put themselves in the top 4. So the fact that he couldn't, that's alarm bells ringing. And also, like I said, if you're comparing him to other managers, Ten Hag comes in at Manchester United, Conte full season, he's nowhere near these guys. So he's a mid-table manager. If you stick with him next season up against these now teams that you're competing with currently, who are actually have proper managers, top managers in charge, and their structure aligns and everything goes swimmingly in the market, and they actually start to put themselves in a position where they can actually take themselves out of a mess in terms of recruitment, not signing Emerson Royale, not signing, some of the players Man United have signed over the years, then you're in serious shit. And it's only a matter of time before Newcastle actually start. The Premier League is the Premier League. No one is ever safe. I remember when Liverpool were just dwindling down in 7th with Paul Konchesky at left back. It can get like that. Like Arsenal can really end up not. If you don't take advantage, you could end up just, okay, well, we missed our chance. And then that was an opportunity to kick on and really push now. And then now you're just chilling again in like 7th or whatever for the next 3-4 years. You never know. So he's got to go, because he's not, he's done some things right. This season hasn't been dreadful. Of course not. But there's context to it. And the context is that he's got more time to train these players, more time to work on tactics. And if he can't get it right now, he's not getting it right when you're playing Thursday nights.
Can I just ask a question about that, though, Matisse? Like, just real quick, if you don't mind. Like, so first of all, do you think that the club, set Arteta aside, do you think the club is doing the right thing, investing in this sort of new youth project and sort of getting rid of the older players that were sticking plaster over the problems and trying to rebuild from a young core? I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah,
that approach?
I definitely do. I don't think all of them have been great. I think some of them, I think sometimes when you go down this road, you forget balance. And I will look at Arsenal's defense, it's all too young. The forward line, it's all too young. There's a lack of experience. You still need older senior players in their prime that are going to take you through results when the other guys are going through their natural inconsistency. So I do feel like from a squad building aspect, that is kind of been a little bit misjudged. But I do agree with getting rid of a lot of the guys, yeah.
Yeah, but because the only reason I raised that is, right, I mean, and you said earlier on the stream, like, you think he was right to get rid of Aubameyang. But I think, like, if you look at this team and you say, like, well, you had this guy Aubameyang who was your experienced high-paid striker to help the young project plus Lacazette. You have Nicola Pepe who, for one reason or another has sort of drifted out of contention there, and that is on Arteta. And then, like, we had Thomas Partey. He's gone. Kieran Tierney, he's gone. Tomiyasu, he's gone. And, like, I guess it's just that the part of me that wants to get hysterical, right, and be like, you can't let this happen, Mikel. It's the first time we've had 2 runs of 3 losses in the Premier League or in football since 1982-83. That, we're setting a lot of bad records. I get it. But then I'm trying to look at it. I'm like saying, okay, let's say we had a different manager. Pick any manager in the world. We have Klopp, we have Pep. Coming out of the international break, you lose Partey, you have no Tierney, you have no Tomiyasu, Aubameyang's out of the club. Like, I'm sort of struggling to see what I wish he was doing differently. You know what I mean? Like, we've decided to lean into this youth-based rebuild. We've lost due to injury some of the core components of structure and experience we had. And I guess I'm just like, if you said to Conte, all right, you're not going to have Son and Kane for the run-in, when he lost 7 games on the trot, which would be absolutely frame. Like people be saying Klopp out. So you know what I mean? I feel like if I asked you going into the international break when we were well in position to finish top 4, I think you might have been inclined to say he's done what needed to be done this season.
Yeah.
And so I'm having a hard time squaring that with what's happened over the 3 games since.
I think for me as well, the more experienced managers, not all of them, because obviously Mourinho and Conte, some of them are quite all over the shop, but maybe they handle those situations better with the Aubameyangs and the Guendouzi's and the Salibas.
No question.
So the fact that his inexperience of man management is also into question as well. And then I'm also looking at who wants to come and play for Arteta. He's not a legend of the game, so you don't have that pull. So there's so much going against him in that regard. But when you go back to what you were saying in terms of what can he actually do, the only reason why I'm putting him under fire so much is because it feels like when he came in, it was him and Edu that was spearheading this revolution, this project, this player recruitment. He apparently had a lot of say. If he was not having a lot of say on these moves and these players leaving and coming in, which I'm led to believe he does have that say, then I would take the blame off him a bit more. And if, say, you had someone that was the face of that, like a director of football, who made those decisions on his behalf and he got them wrong, then I'd be like, okay, cool. That's not Arteta's fault. You've given him a squad that he's not able to progress with. But when this all started, a lot of people are sacked. And it was apparently Arteta and Edu, they're going to be the face of this Arsenal revolution. So I'm led to believe he's got a big say. And until I hear otherwise, he's got to take a lot of the blame for the squad building because it is his squad. Like when you go through it, there's a lot of players that he's recruited, very few that he hasn't. And like I said, when you're talking about depth, Traveres, you're talking about Cedric, you're talking about all these players. He signed them. Lokonga. This was their idea to get these players. So now you kind of have to take responsibility for the fact that they're not maybe good enough or they're not, putting you on a level that you can still compete at.
I totally agree with that. And I want to be clear, like where I am most critical of Mikel is I think the man management and the squad building is flawed. And I think the backslapping and celebration, self-congratulatory nonsense about our last summer was overstated. And I think Matteo Guendouzi is a player we discarded. He's talented. We could have used him. Aubameyang is a player we discarded. For whatever reason, we could have used him. The Mesut Ozil thing I'm less exercised about because I just don't think it made a difference one way or the other. But I've been following Arsenal for a very, very long time. I can't think of a single player we paid to leave as an Arsenal fan in 20 years. We've done it 4 or 5 times in 2 seasons. That can't be right. I mean, there's got to be an underlying fundamental flaw there. So yes, Matisse, I agree with this. In terms of his tactics and his coaching, I saw things this season that encouraged me in a way I wasn't encouraged last season. But if you said to me, he's got to go and here's why, I would build that argument primarily around man management and squad building for sure. And Arsenal did one thing that I didn't understand. After he lifted the FA Cup with a run-in that league-wise and Europe-wise was not good, they turned around and immediately made him manager. He went from first-team coach to manager within 4 months of being at the club. And for a guy in his first job, that's a tremendous amount of responsibility to lay on top of him as he's trying to learn the job. So I thought that was too much to give him at that time, and it may be the case that was too much responsibility.
Yeah, and I think you bang on there, Elliot, in terms of that. I think there's been a lot of mistakes that haven't just happened this season. I think we're seeing that, and it's becoming quite evident, if I'm honest. Guys, there's 1,000 people watching. That's absolutely amazing. Please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And go over to Arsenal Vision podcast, do exactly the same thing. And, of course, Matisse's channel as well. I'm going to bring up some super chats. Before I do that, I'm going to get a score prediction from you both. Matisse, I'll start with you, bro. What do you reckon the score is going to be on Wednesday, mate?
I went with a 2-0 prediction. I'm going to stick to it. I think there's a lack of goals in the team at the moment. It seems if the young players don't stand up, and we do have top defenders where they play on their A game, we should be fine. So I'm hoping that we can just win this comfortably. So, yeah, I'm going to go 2-0. But I wouldn't be surprised if you guys do make it a lot closer than that because you do have to. You need to win. So,
yeah, no, we really do. Elliot, what about you, bro?
I think probably 2-1 Chelsea. I don't think it'll be an embarrassment, but I don't think we have the firepower, and we're a team that's lacking confidence desperately. So, yeah, I'd say 2-1.
I think you're both sensible. I am going to go with Matisse. I think it's going to be a 2-0 loss, unfortunately. I can't see where the goals are coming from at this Arsenal side at the moment, and I don't think that's going to change. I think we're a side that are completely down in the dumps at the moment, and going to Stamford Bridge is never easy anyway when you're on form, let alone when you're out of form. So I can't see anything but a Chelsea win, I'm afraid, which I think will just knock everything on the head. Even though I kind of think it's on the head already, I know that it's not mathematically, and stats mean that we can still make it and stuff like that. I just think the way we're playing, it's not looking too comfortable. I have a couple of bits of sad news to say. First of all, I didn't know if this was real or not, but it has been confirmed. Cristiano Ronaldo's young son has passed away, and rest in peace here from a super chat. Absolutely horrendous news. So we thoughts go with him and the family. It's absolutely horrendous. And on that, the Arsenal community lost somebody today as well. Steve Rowley sadly passed. Unbelievable chief scout, fantastic in the scouting at Arsenal, and very, 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 very sad news when I heard that today. So I hope that all of his family, of course, our thoughts are with them as well. Let's get to your super chats, people. Matisse, this one's for you. This one's quite an interesting one, actually, for me. It says, Matisse, would you believe Arsenal fans that they say that they don't want to be like Chelsea because they sack their managers when it doesn't work out? We don't want to win or have the same standards, and that's why Chelsea win. I think I think he makes a good point there, Matisse, and I was interested to get your kind of thoughts on that, because you're a team that do that. You know, you might have 15 managers in 15 years, but you have 15 trophies to show for it. So do you think that that is kind of what Arsenal perhaps need to look like doing, or do you think that, you know, the way that we're run is completely different to that, and, you know, that's just the way it is?
We'll definitely run differently. I think that starts from the top. I think there's an error and a sense of comfortable mentality at the top, where, you know, as long as the certain achievements in, you know, prize money or whatever they want, new tracksuits coming out after defeats, whatever it is that they want, clearly there's enough boxes being ticked where they're quite happy to continue as things are. So I always think it starts from the top. And we obviously, under previous ownership, we just do not mess about in terms of trophies. That's what we're looking to do, is win. And we was hunting down that first Champions League like crazy, and the second one kind of just fell into our arms a little bit of Tuchel. But yeah, it is different mentality from the top. I definitely think so. But listen, I'm seeing the chat there saying, help us to sack Arteta. It's just an absolute madness. It's an absolute madness where we are in terms of like our happiness with our manager. You honestly, 99.9%, there's always that 0.1, but you can't find a Chelsea fan who doesn't absolutely love having Tuchel as our manager. And then it's the complete opposite of you guys. It's really like, you know,
can I say one thing on that point, just about saying, because like I realize that like I'm conflicted about what we should do, but I want to be clear about this. I think Arsenal fans are way too precious about sacking managers, because we had one for 20 years. Sack all the managers. I honestly don't care. I think we overrate what managers do. Like 95% of how a team performs is the talent, and the last 5% is the manager. Like the super elite managers, I think, get a little something extra out of their team, and the really trashy managers drag their team down. And I think almost all the other managers will get you roughly to the level of your talent. Like there's not a manager that's going to take Norwich and make them a Champions League team, right? And I remember, you know, when Leicester won the title, everybody was saying that Claudio Ranieri is the best manager in the world, right? And like, to be clear, he did a great job with that group, but it turns out, guess what? Vardy and Mahrez and Conte, right? Like they had a sensational team. We just didn't know it at the time. And the other teams faltered and they won. So like, whatever you think my opinions of Arteta are, they're trash, they're good, you hate them, you love them. If we sacked him tomorrow, I'd have no problem, because I genuinely think that fans are way too precious about managerial changes, and especially Arsenal fans, because we had so much stability for so long. To me, if there's someone better and we identify who that better person is, go get him. Always go get the next guy who's better. That much I definitely agree with.
100% agree. I couldn't agree more. Troy, thank you so much for your super chat. He's saying he's begged Xhaka, Eddie Murphy, and Mustafi to stay, and bought Willian, Marie and Cedric. I don't trust this man to spend another $1, let alone another quarter bill. True Gunners TV. Elliot, I'll bring this one to you actually, because this is an interesting point. He's saying, trust the process. It took Klopp 4 years. He's changed the culture, apparently. He's obviously being sarcastic there. But there's rumours that we've brought somebody else in now to try and look at the culture at Arsenal. Yeah, what's happening here, man? What's your thoughts on this?
I went on a bit of a rant about this the other day. If I have to hear about culture again, I'm just going to throw my hands up and walk away. Like culture doesn't win you anything. My attitude about culture is if it's toxic, it can prevent you from winning. But mostly culture is one of these squishy ad hoc topics that we evaluate after the fact. So when a team wins, we say they clearly have a winning culture. And when a team loses, you say there's something wrong with the culture at Arsenal. And like, yes, ideally you'd like a harmonious dressing room and the fans on board and everybody rowing together. But I have almost never seen a situation where a team that wins a lot is said to have a bad culture, right? I mean, the Invincibles had prima donnas, cliques. They had players that got red cards, that got into fights. Nobody had a problem with the culture. It was a battling culture, right? It was a winning culture. So like, I just think the word is overdone. The relationship between the fans and the club is always going to be there, but it's better when you win and it's worse when you lose. And that's true for the players and it's true for everyone else. So like what Klopp did is he came in and he got better players and brought a better system and started winning. And their culture looks a lot better. Right? You know, ask Manchester City what their culture was before Sheikh Mansour took over, right? Ask Newcastle what their culture was, right? I bet in 3 seasons they're going to be saying, look at how we've changed the culture. Well, you spend £1 billion and you rock it up the table and the culture suddenly looks better. So I think it's ad hoc nonsense, personally.
Yeah, fair
Post
point.
hoc nonsense.
Fair point. AMT, thank you very much for your kind donation. He says, even if Arsenal qualify for the Champions League next season, I don't think they'll get better players because it's Arteta, something Matisse brought up earlier, to be honest. Chaitanya's come in with a good one. Matisse, let's put this to you, man.
Yeah.
Because I just think this is potentially a bit nonsense, but I can see where Chaitanya's coming from. Big up Chaitanya again, mate. Do you think that we should go for Tuchel if Chelsea have new owners? Does KSE have the guts to sack Arteta?
Are you
if
mad?
we finish 6th or below, looking very likely now. I don't quite listen. I'd love Thomas Tuchel. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm debating. I don't really think he's going anywhere. Am I right in saying that, Matisse?
He is not going. Listen, guys. I have been nice so far, but you are starting to try me. Listen, absolutely no way in hell's like there's no way, and I'll tell you why. Because new owners have got to come in, and what have they got to do immediately? Get the fans on side, right? They've got to get the fans on side. And the last thing you do when you come in, when you're trying to get the fans on side, is to then let go of Tuchel, who is literally, it's a unanimous support right now. He is one of our most popular managers we've probably had in our history, in our recent, in the recent history, at least anyway, since all the turbulent of current switching up of managers. So yeah, there's no way on that. And also, I don't think Tuchel will go to Arsenal respectively. If he's going to another job, he's going to one of the top teams in European football. He's one of the top managers in the world, and you guys are not in that position right now to be making that step. This hope that Chelsea are going to suddenly plummet, I think it's a little bit overdone. Yeah, we're not going to have the same cash as we had before, but Chelsea have kind of been trying to balance the books in terms of spending recently anyway. Yeah, we spent 100 million on Lukaku, but we also sold 100 million worth of talent. And then you'd actually say that we should probably have never done that, because Gurhi, Livramento, these are actually probably really talented, useful players in comparison to bringing in one forward who hasn't really done anything. So all that's going to happen is Chelsea are going to probably try and go down the FSG model of being a little bit more intelligent with their recruitment. And there's obviously going to be stadium plans, all these kind of things. But Tuchel really is enjoying his time at Chelsea, and it's quite clear as well. So I don't expect him to just walk just because we don't have as much money as we had before.
I agree that we're not going to get Tuchel. That's silly. But like the idea that we couldn't get a manager we want is also ridiculous. And I'm not saying you're saying that, Matisse, but like you pay the money, you get the manager. Like Arsenal are a big club. They've got the money. I mean, look who the last two managers of Tottenham Hotspur were, right? I mean, they've got Antonio Conte right now. And before a little dalliance, they had Jose Mourinho. Ancelotti was the manager of Everton, right? Like if you've got the money and you're in the Premier League and you're in London and you've got a big global fan base, yeah, we can go get any manager we want if we're willing to spend to do it. I mean, the argument you could make is that we've gone cheap on 2 consecutive managers more than anything, but I don't think that there's anything stopping us from getting any manager we want if we're willing to pay the money it takes to get them.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree. I don't like this, Elliot, when people sit there and say, well, who else is out there? Who's going to do a better job? I hate that. That's, to me, it's just so naive because,
It's a cop
listen,
out,
there's.
isn't it?
Oh, 100% it is. I don't understand it. I don't really get how people can actually believe what they're saying when it gets to that stage, especially when somebody like Mikel Arteta has come into his first job. That to me suggests that there's many managers out there. I mean, Mancini, Ancelotti, Rafa Benitez even would be better to go for. And people are saying he's washed up and that he's finished, but for me, he's got more experience than Mikel Arteta, so surely he could do a better job. You look at the Brendan Rodgers and the Pochettinos that people are talking about, as much as they
What
would be
about
on my
Graham
list.
Potter?
Graham Potter is a great shout. Absolutely fantastic shout, and everyone said he was washed up because he's lost 6 in a row now, and now he's gone and beaten Spurs and Arsenal, and now everyone thinks he's great again. So I really like what he's doing. I think I'm a huge Diego Simeone fan. People don't want him because he's a nutcase and because he plays unattractive football, but for me, he's a winner, and I think he's the only other manager out there in that elite bracket for me with the Klopp and Pep and Tuchels of this world. So I think that we have to be trying to look to trump those, and I think that's the only way forward. But if we are going to go on a similar Mikel Arteta project, I would rather give it to somebody like Graham Potter, who's actually got the experience over in Ostersunds and at Swansea and, of course, now at Brighton. So that's the way I see it. I really do. But, Elliot, I want to bring this last one in. For you, because this is our Fred, Granit Xhaka. Andrew, thank you very much. As long as Granit Xhaka is playing in midfield, Arsenal will not get top 4. He isn't good. Do you guys think that Arteta will replace him next summer? No. Xhaka will be here next summer and we will fail. It does seem a player that we just can't seem to get rid of, and that's probably the wrong thing to say, but it is a player that seems to be hanging around and he does divide the fan base. What's your thoughts on that position in moving forward?
It's tough, right? Like, he's just not my player. I look, there are guys that you just love when nobody else likes them, and there are guys you don't like. I didn't warm to Olivier Giroud. I didn't warm to Francis Coquelin. I've never warmed to Granit Xhaka. Like, there's just some guys that don't click for me. I think the lack of fleetness of foot, right? The inability to play on the first touch or play quick enough at the Premier League level. He tackles with his arms instead of sliding into position. I think he's got weaknesses that have cost us. And like, set the mentality stuff aside. The thing I have to admit is every manager he's ever had seems to love him, right? They all pick him. They all love him. They all want him to be their guy. And when managers love a player, that tells you something about them. I'm sure he trains great. He's a leader in the dressing room, whatever. But like, to be fair, we have not been top 4 since he came in. You know what's really interesting too? I think the whole design of our midfield changed when we went to Xhaka. Arsene Wenger famously, when we signed him and was asked about him, said, oh, he's a box-to-box player. And 2 weeks later, he was asked about him, and he literally said he's a player who sits deeper and plays the intermediate value passes. I'm not sure that we knew exactly what we were getting. And like, without time and space, he really struggles. And he gets that for Switzerland, and he got it in the Bundesliga, and he doesn't get it in the Premier League. He's not a bad player. We create these binaries. I just think he holds us back. And Dan, we get no goals from midfield and no assists from midfield. And that has really been the case since he came in and been the anchor of it. So I think we need to start thinking about midfield differently. And I think his profile is one we should move away from. And that doesn't mean I hate him and he's worthless, but I think he is an impediment for us personally.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to see an upgrade in that position. And whether you like him or not, he's not the guy that we need. And it's funny because someone just brought up a chat there. We haven't kicked to Champions League football since we've signed Granit Xhaka. The season we signed him, we were in the Champions League and we lost 10-2 to Bayern Munich on aggregate. And that's the last time we've kicked to Champions League football with Granit Xhaka in our midfield. So I think it does need an upgrade. Guys, we're going to wrap it up there. I appreciate you both for coming on. First of all, Elliot, thank you, mate. Absolute legend. Really appreciate your thoughts. How can people, what are you up to at the moment? When's your next Arsenal Vision podcast, mate?
Yeah, well, one just came out right now called Ambivalence, the word of the day. We'll have a live stream ourselves pre-match with Clive and Tim and the gang for the game on Wednesday. And then our full pod will be out on Thursday. We'll have our instant reaction at full time on the Patreon side of things. And I do just want to shout out all of our listeners in our community because we did a fundraiser with the Arsenal Foundation as partners to raise money for child refugees in Ukraine and Syria and Yemen. Wow. And we did a week-long fundraiser, and we raised $130,000 in a week, about 101,000 pounds. So just tremendous display of philanthropy and generosity from the community. Fantastic. I want to thank everyone for that.
Yeah, 100%, man. And absolutely love your pod, man. I listen to you all the time. And
thanks,
it's a great...
all credit to Clive and Tim and Paul.
And yourself, mate, of course. But thank you for coming on, man. Absolute top man. Matisse, legend, thank you, man. Great to have you on, bro, and talking all things Chelsea and, of course, Arsenal. How can people follow your content, mate?
Listen, it's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure. It's been good talking about this stuff, and not just always Chelsea. It's good to. This is why I love the previews, because it's good to talk about other clubs as well. For me, you can find me on MAH on YouTube. We just had a show that went out with Dan Potts himself, and also with Dan Lawless and Toby. The London Clubs Carnage show is out. We're doing it on Mondays now, so it's coming out a bit close to the weekend. Bit more reaction. There was certainly a lot of bite in that intro. Me and Dan just looking back at each other and be like, yo, they've already started arguing without us even introducing. So yeah, it was a quality show. We spoke about all the London clubs and a little bit of Palace, with their celebrations at Wembley, and they're definitely bantering Chelsea fans a lot at the moment as well. So for our quiet Wembley capacity. But yeah, look, you can check that all out on the channel. Yeah, big up for having me.
Mate, absolute pleasure. Always welcome on, man, and thanks so much. And lastly to you guys, please remember that we have our live audience on Thursday, the day after the Chelsea game. We'll be going to the Hippodrome Casino. Be myself and lead judges. It'll be Sophie Nicolau from the Harbury squad, Tom Canton from the Gooner Talk TV, and Harry Simi from Chronicles of Gooner. And of course, our special guest and friend of the show, Super Kevin Campbell, is there. If you would like to attend, then please send a DM to the Instagram Lead Judges TV. It is absolutely free, and we will make sure that we get you a ticket for entry. But there is only a few left, people, so please do get in there quickly, and hopefully we'll see you all on Thursday evening. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you all so much. We will see you next time. Up the Arsenal, and let's hope and pray for 3 points. Take care, guys.